My name was Jamal. I was a Qadi, a judge bound by the weight of tradition and expectation. In a London court where the rules of sharia governed all, I held a position of power, a power that felt increasingly hollow. I was respected, I was feared, but behind the authoritative facade, I was unraveling. For every verdict delivered, a void grew inside me, an echo of unanswered prayers and unshakable emptiness. In the silence of my deepest reflections, I wrestled with an internal storm, an eerie sensation that something was gravely wrong. What had once felt like divine law began to feel like chains binding me to a system that was suffocating not just me, but countless others. Desperation colored my dreams, where shadows whispered bitter doubts about the faith I had upheld all my life. I was lost without acknowledging it, teetering on the edge of a precipice. Then, in an unexpected moment during a trial, everything changed. I collapsed, spiraling into darkness. As my consciousness slipped away, I found myself standing in a courtroom unlike any I'd ever known, a spiritual tribunal enveloped in both terror and wonder. In that space, suspended between life and death, a radiant figure emerged, calling my name, Jamal. It was Jesus. He stood not merely as a savior, but as the embodiment of truth itself, unveiling the layers of deception cloaking my spirit. What followed was a revelation so profound that I can hardly put it into words. I saw not just my struggles, but the machinery of oppression wielded by those who twisted faith for control. I realized I had been an unwitting instrument in a grand design, protecting a false peace built on fear and conformity. The essence of my existence was suddenly illuminated, and I was left with gut-wrenching urgency to share this newfound light. But awakening is painful. In the aftermath of my return, the world I re-entered was unwelcoming. My testimony was met with scorn, my family turned their backs, and the community I cherished cast me out as a heretic. I now stood alone, wrestling with guilt and longing for the love I was losing, while deep inside, a fire ignited, a calling that demanded to be answered. So now, as I recount my journey from darkness to hope, I invite you into this sacred space of transformation. The truth I discovered is not just mine. It's a message for all who feel trapped by the shackles of tradition. Before we begin, I urge you, share where you're watching from and the time of day it is in your corner of the world. Knowing this truth travels far is an honor. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. We're about to unlock revelations so powerful that they could change your life forever. This is just the beginning. In that solemn court in London, where we were guided by the principles of Sharia law, my role as a Qadi was both a privilege and a burden. I'm Muhammad, and for years I've dedicated myself to serving my community, embodying the values and traditions that define our way of life. Surrounded by a respectful gathering, I sensed the weight of silence often wrapped around us. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as justice was sought for those who stood before me. Yet, despite the importance of that role, I felt an unsettling emptiness gnawing at my soul, whispering doubts that had begun to surface. During those proceedings, I found myself increasingly questioning the very laws I upheld. As I listened to the cases presented, flashes of dreams haunted me, dreams where a radiant figure seemed to beckon me. The dreams grew more vivid and insistent, the figure's voice piercing through the murmur of my conscience. Each day, I walked between my professional obligations and an internal battle for truth. The weight of my position clashed with the awakening I felt stirring within me, a realization that something deeper lay beyond our established ways of understanding faith and justice. Then, one fateful day, everything changed. As I pronounced a sentence in what seemed like an ordinary case, a wave of dizziness swept over me. The courtroom blurred, and in that moment of disorientation, I found myself enveloped in darkness. Suddenly, I was transported to a bright landscape where all my doubts melted away in the divine presence of Jesus. He stood before me, bathed in a glow that made everything else fade into insignificance. Muhammad. He called with a gentle authority that resonated within my very being. In that instant, I felt the love and truth emanating from him, illuminating the shadows of my past. Jesus began to reveal truths about the spiritual war that surrounds us, a conflict not just of individuals battling their beliefs, but one that involves the very fabric of society. He unveiled the hidden agendas of the elite, the manipulation that twists our perception of truth for their benefit. I witnessed visions of a world divided, wars ignited by lies, communities torn apart by fear, and how all of these deceptions were rooted in the very systems we often unquestioningly uphold. Each revelation struck me like a thunderclap, shaking the foundations of my understanding and compelling me to confront the uncomfortable reality. Much of what we hold dear can become instruments of control rather than sources of genuine spiritual growth. When I returned to the courtroom, it was as if I had been given a new pair of eyes. The reactions of the people around me hovered in my mind as I pondered the path ahead. Would I dare share what Jesus had revealed? I felt a powerful urge to awaken those around me, to challenge the perceptions that keep us tethered to the past. But I was deeply aware of the personal costs. The fear of backlash from my community loomed over me. Would my colleagues believe me? Would my family embrace me or view me as having strayed from the righteous path? The tension was palpable, and yet the urgency to unveil the truth and challenge the hidden agendas became a relentless whisper in my heart. As I looked out at the faces in the courtroom, I knew I had to take action. This spiritual awakening was not just for me. It was a call to speak out against the deception that binds us all. I yearned to cultivate conversations around faith that transcended the limitations of tradition, encouraging a collective re-examination of beliefs that often bring division rather than unity. The journey that lay before me was fraught with challenges, but the light of Jesus continued to guide my steps. I was prepared to face the spiritual war head-on, committed to leading others into an awakening that could change not only our lives, but also the world at large. My name is Jamal, and as a 45-year-old Qadi in London, I've spent years navigating the complexities of justice within our community. Everyone perceives me as an imposing figure, a carrier of deep-rooted traditions and strict religious adherence, yet beneath that surface lies an emotional emptiness that gnaws at my soul. Day after day, I preside over cases, making decisions that affect lives, all while wrestling with a profound internal conflict. I find myself torn between the teachings I've devoted my life to and a yearning for something more, something that transcends the confines of the roles I've been assigned. In the quiet moments after sentencing, I often reflect on the weight of expectation that sits heavily on my shoulders. Despite my respect in the community, I feel increasingly isolated in my conviction. My prayers sometimes feel disconnected, leaving me with a sense of longing for deeper spiritual connection. I recall dreams where I hear a gentle voice calling my name, a voice that stirs my heart but also fills me with confusion. Could it be my faith, urging me toward a more profound understanding? I question whether I've been blinded by the very beliefs I hold most dear, grappling with the possibility that I might be caught in a spiritual war that I am unwittingly part of. Then, one fateful evening, as I sat in my office reflecting on the day, I was struck by an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. As I leaned back in my chair, everything faded into darkness. I felt as though I was being pulled from reality, and then suddenly I found myself in a vast, empty desert, a terrain that felt foreign yet strangely familiar. Before me stood a figure bathed in radiant light, and in that moment, I recognized him, Jesus. His presence was unlike anything I had ever known, a powerful blend of love and wisdom that washed over me, erasing my fears in an instant. "Jamal," he said with a voice that resonated within my very being. As I listened closely, Jesus began to unveil truths about the hidden agendas of the elite that manipulate the lives of ordinary people. I was shown visions of the world engulfed in deception, a web of lies orchestrated by those in power who exploit faith for control. The spiritual war one had sensed within myself extended far beyond my personal struggles. It was a conflict deeply rooted in our society, influencing the actions of leaders and the beliefs of the masses. I could see how technology and fear were used as weapons to create division and chaos, perpetuating ignorance while keeping people bound in a cycle of compliance. When I emerged from that otherworldly experience, I was shaken, feeling the weight of these revelations pressing against my chest. Returning to the reality of my office, I was overwhelmed with a new sense of purpose. I understood that my experience was not just for my benefit, but a divine calling to awaken those around me. The truths Jesus had revealed could illuminate lives trapped in darkness, offering hope and understanding in a world filled with chaos. But the fear of facing backlash from my community loomed large. How could I share my newfound insights without facing their anger or disappointment? Nevertheless, I felt an undeniable urgency to confront my fears and embrace the calling to help others navigate the spiritual war that raged both within and beyond us. The journey of awakening had now become a mission, a quest for truth, connection, and the love that can heal even the deepest wounds. As I entered the mosque for prayers that night, a deep void began to envelop my heart. My name is Jamal, a dedicated Qadi in London, and for years I've embraced the teachings of our faith and the role entrusted to me by my community. But lately, that commitment has felt increasingly like a weight, pressing down on me as I tried to fulfill my duties. Every prayer I offered felt less like a connection to the divine and more like a performance. The words echoed in my mind, hollow and unfulfilling, and I found myself wrestling with doubts about the very system I served. Each night brought dreams that were both disturbing and transformative. In these dreams, I would find myself in surreal landscapes, often lost amid swirling shadows. Yet, amidst the chaos, I always heard a gentle voice calling my name, drawing me towards a light. It felt like more than just a dream. It was a beckoning, an invitation to seek something deeper. The voice was familiar, and with each dream, I felt the boundaries of my faith shifting. I began to question the rigidity and strictures of our beliefs that seemed to stifle the very essence of spiritual inquiry. What if the rules designed to protect us had instead erected barriers around our understanding of God? Eventually, that turmoil reached a breaking point. One evening, while presiding over a sentencing, I was overcome by a dizzying sensation. Suddenly, the courtroom faded away, and I was plunged into a deep void. Time lost all meaning, and I felt detached from my physical form. Then, the blinding light returned, and there stood Jesus before me, vibrant and radiating warmth. "Jamal," he said, and his voice resonated through every fiber of my being. In that moment, I was filled with an overwhelming love that contradicted all my fears. The truth unfolded like a flower in bloom. I realized Jesus was inviting me to witness the hidden realities of our world. He revealed to me the spiritual war that rages on, a conflict pervaded by deception and manipulation. I saw visions of the elite orchestrating societal chaos, constructing narratives that kept people in a constant state of fear and division. I understood how religion could sometimes be exploited as a tool for social control, how the very faith that is meant to unite us can sometimes fuel the fires of contention. These revelations were both liberating and terrifying, illuminating paths of understanding I had never thought possible. I realized that many believers were living under the weight of blind faith, unaware of the layers of lies that obscured the truth they sought. When I returned to reality, I felt a surge of purpose coursing through my veins. I was no longer just a Qadi. I had been transformed into a messenger. The fear of speaking out against the norms that governed my community began to fade in the face of what I had witnessed. I understood that sharing these truths, however challenging, was crucial. I had a responsibility to guide others through this spiritual war, encouraging them to rise above the deceptions that bound them and awaken to the truth that offers freedom. Yet I couldn't shake the lingering worry about how my community and family would react. Would they see me as a traitor, or could they possibly share in the awakening I had found? The journey forward was daunting, but the light of Jesus pushed me to stand firm and share what I had learned, one heart at a time. As I sat in the courtroom, presiding over a hearing that weighed heavy on my soul, I could feel the tension in the air. My name is Jamal, and as a Qadi, my responsibility was to dispense justice according to our principles of sharia law. The case before me involved complex issues of family and faith that touched me deeply. I had always taken pride in my ability to deliver fair judgments, but on that day, an unsettling emptiness gripped me. I felt the pressure of expectations bearing down, the relentless tug of tradition battling against my own burgeoning doubts about the nature of truth and justice. Suddenly, without warning, I began to feel dizzy. The room around me spun, and as I struggled to regain my composure, darkness enveloped me. I collapsed, and in that moment, I passed into a state of clinical death. Upon entering this void, I found myself in a vast, shadowy courtroom, unlike anything I had ever known. The ambiance was thick with despair, and I could feel the presence of countless souls surrounding me. It was both terrifying and oddly familiar, as if I had stepped into a realm where the fabric of reality was woven from the very fears I had been grappling with. Then, in the center of this enigmatic courtroom, I saw him, Jesus, illuminated by an ethereal light. His gaze pierced through the shadows, and a sense of calm washed over me. Jamal, he called, and in his voice I felt the weight of compassion and understanding. I realized then that this experience was not merely a figment of my imagination. It was a divine reckoning. As Jesus began to speak, I was filled with revelations about the spiritual war that raged not just in the ether but within every heart. He revealed to me the hidden agendas often employed by the elite, the manipulation of society that obscures our ability to discern truth from deception. I watched visions unfold, scenes of conflict where division was sown through political and social manipulation. I saw the ways in which leaders twist belief for their gain, exploiting fear as a means to maintain control. The intensity of the deception shocked me, shattering the illusions I had held so dearly. I understood that faith can be both a shield and a weapon, wielded to unite or divide. The implications of this revelation were staggering. I realized how many lives were left adrift because they had been misled by those in power, serving a purpose that contradicts the very love and compassion at the core of our beliefs. When I returned to consciousness, the stark reality of the courtroom hit me harder than ever. I was overwhelmed by the urgency of what Jesus had shown me. This experience was not just for me. It was a calling. I knew I had to confront the truths and injustices that had been cast aside in the comfort of tradition. The journey ahead would not be easy. I had to be prepared to face skepticism and rejection from my peers, and perhaps even my family. Yet, the fire ignited within me could not be extinguished. I was determined to share what I had learned, to awaken others to the spiritual war they may not even realize they are part of, and to guide them toward the truth that can set them free. The moment I awoke from my near-death experience, everything felt different. My name is Jamal, and as a Qadi in London, I once believed my life was defined by the rigid structures of faith and tradition. I had always been committed to serving my community through the teachings of Islam, upholding the values that had been instilled in me from a young age. But after my encounter with Jesus, my perspective shifted dramatically. The walls I had built around my beliefs began to crumble, revealing a profound sense of truth that was both exhilarating and terrifying. When I first attempted to share my experience with my family and friends, I was met with stark disbelief and harsh criticisms. The revelations I received, the insights into the deception we face in our spiritual war, felt urgent and necessary to communicate. But instead of acceptance, I was branded a heretic, an outcast from a community that once embraced me. The anger I faced from those I loved stung deeply, and I found myself struggling under the weight of profound guilt. I longed to express the truth I had encountered, the manipulation of the elite, the hidden agendas that steer society away from enlightenment, but I feared the repercussions of my honesty. As the anger from my loved ones grew, so did my sense of solitude. I could hardly bear the silence that followed my attempts at dialogue. It felt as if I had lifted a curtain that should have remained drawn, exposing vulnerabilities I didn't fully understand. In my dreams, Jesus continued to call to me, urging me to face the fear that paralyzed me. "You must not shrink back, Jamal," he reminded me with compassion. Each night I awoke from those dreams filled with a mix of determination and despair, understanding that the journey towards awakening would be fraught with challenges. The emotional divide between my past and present felt insurmountable. I found solace in late-night discussions with those who shared my newfound beliefs. We bonded over experiences that mirrored my own, a shared understanding of the spiritual war and the ways in which society often stifles enlightenment. In those moments, I began to feel a flicker of hope. We discussed how so many are caught in cycles of fear and misunderstanding, manipulated by an elite few who profit from division and conflict. The urgency to break those chains grew deeper within me as I realized our shared mission was not only to awaken ourselves but to reach out to those still trapped in the shadows. Yet, the fear of facing further rejection still lingered in the back of my mind. I was constantly reminded of the love I still held for my family and the traditions I had been raised in. I struggled with the thought of abandoning the people who had shaped my journey. The fear of being cast out weighed heavily on my heart, and I couldn't silence the doubts that crept in. But I also knew that remaining silent would serve no purpose, not to me or to anyone else seeking truth. The divine calling I received from Jesus was a beacon of light guiding me out of darkness, and I was determined to embrace it. As I stood at this pivotal crossroads, the future began to unfold, a path that was rife with uncertainty, but also filled with the potential for awakening the souls around me. Secretly, I began delving into the Bible, my heart both eager and anxious as I turned the pages late at night. My name is Jamal, a Qadi in London committed to upholding tradition and justice within our community. But ever since my encounter with Jesus during that near-death experience, I've felt a profound pull towards exploring a faith that transcends the confines of what I've known. Each verse I read sparked something within me, a hunger for truth that I could no longer ignore. In those solitary moments, I encountered a sense of peace that starkly contrasted with the fear gripping my heart over what I might lose. I sought out testimonies from others who had walked similar paths, individuals who had experienced their own awakenings. Their stories resonated with my struggles and fears, each one reflecting the complexities of navigating faith and identity amidst an often hostile environment. I found comfort in the connections I made, yet the weight of secrecy hung over me like a shadow. How could I share this burgeoning understanding with anyone? The thought of confronting my family and the community I loved filled me with dread. I feared their disapproval, their disappointment, that I might be venturing too far from our shared beliefs. As I continued to explore the teachings of Jesus, a pattern began to emerge that tied everything together: the notion of a hidden agenda, a manipulation of truth orchestrated by the elite to maintain control. I started to see how deceptive narratives infiltrate our lives, stifling genuine connections and understanding. In discussions with my newfound friends, we dissected the spiritual war waged not just in the hearts of men, but across societies worldwide, pitting brother against brother. This understanding ignited a sense of urgency within me. I knew I had to find a way to awaken those around me to the deception that bound them. The emotional turmoil I faced was often overwhelming. I would sit in silence, questioning my decisions and pondering the consequences of speaking out. The peace I found in seeking truth was often overshadowed by a fear of backlash. What if my family viewed my actions as a betrayal? What if they turned away from me, unable to accept this new journey? The thought haunted me, yet I could not turn back. The revelation I had received demanded that I move forward, embracing the calling to help others awaken to the truth. Despite the fear, each day brought me closer to understanding that true freedom often arises from confronting uncomfortable realities. As I immersed myself deeper in the Bible and shared my journey, I slowly began to realize that the strength of conviction often comes through the trials we face. The path ahead was daunting and fraught with uncertainty, but I felt fortified by the truth I sought to share. There was a great awakening on the horizon, and I was determined to play my part, ready to stand against the winds of deception and to shine the light of Jesus into the darkness, illuminating the way for others still trapped in confusion. In the weeks following my encounter with Jesus, I began to comprehend the profound shift taking place within me. My name is Jamal, and as a Qadi in London, I had built my life around the principles of justice and faith. Yet, that moment of revelation during my near-death experience had opened my eyes to a truth much larger than myself. I realized that my experiences were not just personal. They were a calling to stand against the oppressive silence that often governed our community. This was no small task, and the weight of what I intended to do sat heavily on my shoulders. As I sat in my office, reviewing case files and preparing for court sessions, my mind frequently drifted back to the undeniable encounter I had with Jesus. I recalled the enveloping light and how it brought with it a clarity that shattered the illusion of separation I had lived under for so long. He revealed to me the hidden agendas that manipulated our beliefs, the deception that the elite perpetuated through countless avenues, politics, media, even religion itself. It was a powerful revelation, one that transformed my understanding of societal dynamics and the spiritual war we are all unknowingly engaged in. Returning to my community, I felt the pressure mounting. I could see the skeptical glances and hear the whispers as I navigated conversations about faith and truth. My colleagues, who once regarded me as an authority, began to distance themselves, and that fear only amplified the isolation I felt. The fear of their disapproval gnawed at my heart. What would they think if they knew I was questioning the very teachings I had spent a lifetime defending? Would I be branded a heretic, ostracized for daring to embrace a truth that stirred within me and demanded to be shared? In those moments of conflict, I found solace in conversations with others who had experienced their own awakenings. We gathered in small, safe spaces, sharing our journeys and supporting one another in the pursuit of truth. Each story echoed my own struggles, each person facing the challenge of reconciling their new beliefs with the expectations of their communities. As we discussed the urgent matters confronting our world, wars fueled by deception, societal divisions widening by the day, I began to understand the importance of my voice in illuminating these issues for others. Despite the risks, I felt increasingly compelled to speak out. The revelation I had received carried a weight that demanded action. Each day presented a new opportunity to confront the silence that surrounded me and to challenge the status quo. As I prepared to address my community about the truths unveiled to me, I understood that this was more than just a personal journey. It was a mission of awakening. I was determined to break down the barriers that hindered spiritual growth and to encourage others to embrace their own journeys, illuminating the path toward liberation from the hidden agendas that perpetuate deception in our lives. In a defining moment, I made the decision to leave my home and change my name, marking the beginning of my spiritual rebirth. My name is Jamal, and for years I was a respected Qadi in London, absorbed in the study and application of Islamic law. Yet after my near-death experience, where I encountered Jesus, everything I thought I knew crumbled away. The revelations I received transformed my understanding of faith, and I realized that to truly embrace my calling, I needed to step away from the confines of my previous life. As I sat in silence contemplating my future, I felt a stirring deep within me, a pull toward a new mission that was calling for my voice, one that would awaken souls caught in the chains of tradition. Leaving behind my family, my friends, and the community I had served was not an easy choice. It meant confronting the reality that I might never return to the comfort and familiarity of my past. However, the pain I felt was overshadowed by the freedom that awaited me. I immersed myself in my new identity. I adopted a name that symbolized my transformation. This change was more than cosmetic. It was a reflection of the profound awakening I had experienced. My journey became a mission to evangelize, to help others find the liberation I uncovered during my encounter with Jesus. a liberation from the hidden agendas that oppress so many under the cloak of tradition. My heart ached for those who remained trapped in the cycle of deception, held hostage by a spiritual war that most did not even recognize. I met with individuals who expressed their struggles, their desires for clarity in a world filled with misinformation and fear. The more I listened, the more it became clear that my role was to facilitate their awakening. As I shared my story, the urgency of my message resonated deeply. I spoke passionately about the manipulation perpetuated by the elite and how they exploited faith to maintain control over societies. Each conversation became a fervent plea for the truth, an opportunity to unveil the layers of deception that had clouded their understanding. Though I began to find solace in this new community, the emotional toll of my decision was relentless. I was haunted by thoughts of my family, what they must think of my transformation, how they might view me as a traitor to our tradition. The fear of rejection cut deep, making me question if I had made the right choice. But with every passing day, I found a renewed strength in the thought that, through suffering, I had uncovered a truth that transcended my fears. Jesus' love served as a reminder that true spiritual freedom requires us to confront our deepest fears and to embrace the unknown. As I moved forward, I felt a powerful revelation surge within me. The spiritual war one faced was not just my own. It was a collective fight against the forces that sought to divide and conquer. I sensed that my role in this conflict was vital. The truths unveiled to me needed to reach those still caught in darkness. Armed with the knowledge from my encounter with Jesus, I prepared to meet the challenges ahead. Each day was a new opportunity to shine light on the deceptions that have long plagued humanity. I was ready to stand firm in my conviction and to call upon others to join the awakening, knowing that the battle for truth, love, and understanding was only just beginning. Years have passed since that moment of transformation, and now I find myself living in a new country, thousands of miles away from the life I once knew. My name is Jamal, and my journey has taken me down unexpected paths after I encountered Jesus during my near-death experience. My heart is filled with a mission to share the revelations that have shaped my understanding of faith, society, and the spiritual war we all face. Each day, I engage with countless individuals yearning for truth, and it fills me with purpose. In my current life, the experiences I share are met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, a reflection of the society we live in. Every testimony I present about Jesus serves as a beacon of hope for those seeking liberation from the hidden agendas that permeate our lives. I've come to realize how deeply embedded these manipulations run, especially regarding faith and spirituality. The elite often twist these narratives, using them as tools to sow division and confusion. As I speak, I watch as people's eyes widen in understanding, and I sense the stirring of their own awakening. There's an almost electric energy in these exchanges, a reminder that change is possible, that hearts can open to the truth. Yet, even as I find fulfillment in this work, I cannot shake the ache of longing for reconciliation with my family and my original community. I've left behind the familiar faces, the shared traditions that were once the foundation of my existence. The fear of rejection remains a constant companion, whispering doubts into my mind. What would they think if they knew the depths of my beliefs? Would they accept this new version of me? Or would they see me as a traitor to our shared values? This internal conflict often manifests in quiet moments, pulling at my heartstrings and reminding me of the bonds I have severed in pursuit of spiritual freedom. The more I engage with diverse communities, the more I see the same struggles reflected in their eyes. Underneath the layers of belief and tradition lies a desire for connection, for truth. I've spoken with many who have felt the same call to awaken, who have begun to see the deception woven into the fabric of society. These discussions are powerful, but they also come with a weight. The task of enlightening others in the face of societal pressures feels daunting, yet I'm driven by the urgency of this spiritual war. Every story shared, every heart opened, is a step toward a larger transformation not just for individuals but for whole communities. As I continue this path of sharing, I feel the stakes rising. My heartfelt mission to bring about spiritual awakening compels me to delve deeper into the truths Jesus revealed. I explore the connections between personal faith, societal manipulation, and the ongoing struggle for genuine understanding. I know I'm standing at a crossroad, where my past meets the future, filled with both promise and unpredictability. The journey may be marred by pain and sacrifice, but each moment spent spreading this message reinvigorates my commitment. The truth is a powerful catalyst for change, and I'm prepared to face whatever challenges arise as I follow the sacred path laid before me. As I presided over the sentencing in the courtroom, I felt an unsettling heaviness settle in my chest. My name is Jamal, and I have dedicated my life to the principles of justice as a Qadi in London. My days have always been filled with the weight of responsibility, interpreting laws within the framework of tradition. But that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong, both in the case before me and within myself. The pressures of upholding my duties clashed with a growing unease about the rigidity of the belief systems I had adhered to for so long. In the midst of proceedings, a wave of dizziness struck me and I collapsed onto the floor. I slipped into darkness, but it was in that void that I was confronted with a reality far more profound than my earthly existence. Suddenly, I found myself in a vast space that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. Shadows danced around me, filled with faces of those longing for truth and understanding. And then I saw him, Jesus, radiant and enveloped in light. His presence was both comforting and commanding. "Jamal," he called, and his voice cut through my uncertainty with compassion, stirring something deep within me. As I stood in his glorious light, Jesus began to unveil the layers of deception I had been blind to. He spoke of a spiritual war, one that raged quietly beneath the surface of daily life. I was granted visions of manipulation, the hidden agendas of the elite controlling narrative and dividing communities. I saw how fear and ignorance were tools wielded against the very essence of faith, turning believers into pawns in a larger game designed to maintain power. Each revelation felt like an electric shock, tearing away the veil that covered my eyes, forcing me to confront the discomforting reality of how much we are led astray by those who should lead us toward the truth. In that moment of clarity, I understood that the chains binding so many were crafted from the beliefs we held dear. I began to weep, not just for myself, but for everyone trapped in the darkness of deception. The realization that I had a role to play in breaking those chains grew stronger. My heart raced as I committed to this newly ignited purpose: to awaken others to the truth and to point them toward the light of Jesus. I felt the heartbeat of a greater mission pulsing through me, a calling to serve that surpassed my previous identity. When I finally regained consciousness in the courtroom, the stark reality was jarring. The world around me felt drastically altered, yet the echoes of Jesus' words persisted in my mind. I had returned to my life, but I was no longer the same man who had entered that void. I was ready to confront the spiritual war not only within myself, but in my community. Despite the fear of backlash, rejection, and the potential to lose everything I had known, I understood that silence would not serve me or the people I was meant to help. The path forward was uncertain, but I felt an undeniable urgency to begin speaking out, to bring the truth of awakening to those still lost in the shadows. Now that you've journeyed with me through the corridors of darkness and illumination, I need to leave you with a question that echoes far beyond this screen. What truths have you uncovered in the shadows of your own life? Have you ever felt the urge to break free from beliefs that confine you, or sensed a deeper calling whispering to your soul? It's essential to reflect on these experiences, for they may guide you through the spiritual war that surrounds us all. What I witnessed during my encounter with Jesus was not just pivotal for me. It's a revelation meant for you too. We are all participants in a grand narrative woven intricately through faith, manipulation, and awakening. There's something greater happening, an awakening that demands our attention, our courage, and our willingness to step into the light. As you ponder your own journey, I encourage you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights matter, and you are not alone in this quest for truth. If you felt something resonate within you today, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond. Hit that notification bell as well, because what lies ahead in our upcoming videos will delve even deeper into the revelations waiting to be uncovered. Together, we will explore further testimonies that challenge our perceptions and shine light on the hidden battles we face. In our next video, join me as we navigate the incredible experience of someone who encountered the divine in a life-saving moment, sparking a radical transformation that echoes mine. I'm Jamal, and I thank you for sharing this time with me. Remember, the journey for truth is a shared one, and it begins right here, right now.